Hi everyone, I'm Stacy Maldonado. I am originally from LA, but I've been living in the Bay Area for on and off for about 15, 16 years now. So I actually call the Bay Area home. Who am I? I am a social entrepreneur in the making. I haven't had a full-time job in over a year, and I decided to become an entrepreneur. What that means, I'm still trying to figure it out. But I figured if I call myself that, then it's one step closer to actually starting my business and my endeavor. So that's who I am.
Cool, that's awesome. And what are your endeavors? What if you would like to share?
Sure. So I am passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I know those become buzzwords. And so I don't even say I'm a DI consultant. I am sticking with DI strategist for now, just because it encompasses a lot of what I want to do. But I'm really passionate about having vulnerable conversations. I've worked in both the nonprofit and in corporate America. And as much as these organizations and companies say, we want you to bring your full self, it's bullshit. That's not true, because
Yeah.
the minute that you tell your true self, then you ruffle some feathers and they say you're too much and then they fire you.
Yeah.
Or so they make up excuses. So I want to normalize what that actually looks like in the workplace, and help build healthier workplace environments. And I don't know, a lot of that work is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work, but it's much, much bigger than that. So I'm not looking to do DI workshops, because I compare them to sexual harassment workshops where it's just a checkbox.
Yeah.
Um, I'm looking to actually work with organizations who are willing to roll their sleeves up and do the work. And that's breaking down processes, re-strategizing, really doing a full-on assessment of what their company looks like and what they can do to build those healthy work environments.
I absolutely love that. And I love that you say that. I love the vision for that. And I especially really like that, for some reason we like labels, right? So you kind of have to label it DEI, but we know that there's so much more that goes into that work than just that label. And I think part of that, right? Like, you're totally right. Bring your whole self to work, bring your whole self to anything, really. I think we have been sort of taught, and in the systems that we're a part of sort of teach us to not bring our whole selves. So I find that this conversation today, especially, is sort of a way to start breaking down that barrier and saying, no, you actually don't have to be muted. You don't have to be not yourself. And for me, this idea or and acting on self-care and taking care of myself has been one of those things where it's like, well, I almost have to find myself within that space. And so I'd love to ask you, from in your perspective, from the work that you do and just your personal life, how do you engage in self-care, and what does that even look like for you, day to day, month to month, whatever it is?
Well, self-care has been a long, long, long journey. I actually had a live with, I don't know if you watched, with Deborah a couple months ago, and she said, I've been watching you. You've been promoting self-care for so long. And I was like, girl, when I started talking about self-care, I didn't even know what self-care really was. Like, I wasn't doing it right.
I watched
To
that,
me,
by the way.
back then was like, oh, self-love, self-care was like, watch a movie, do the things that it was like doing the things that brought me joy. But at the time, I wasn't really doing self-love. Like, I didn't love myself the way that I love myself now. This was, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. So it's been a really long, long journey. And I've learned that it's a lifelong journey. You're going to develop habits that you're going to grow out of them. You're going to be overwhelmed by the habits that you're trying to develop. And so self-care really starts with doing a lot of inner work. Like I said, I felt like I didn't truly love myself. And maybe about 5 years ago, I was actually working in a very abusive environment, and I fell into depression. I had a lot of anxiety. And after that, I decided I had had enough. I needed to prioritize myself, and I quit my job. And I actually went backpacking on a 3 month solo travel for 3 months. And that's when I truly discovered what true self love was. I went on an Inca trail, and I had no one else to talk to but myself. And I was exploring my spirituality, and so I was praying a lot because it's freaking hard to do the Inca Trail. And I'm not saying everyone has to go on this journey to connect with themselves, but some version of it. I think really getting out of your comfort zone to get to know you and what you need. Also, being from the Latinx community, we're taught to prioritize others before us, and so I'm going off all over the
No,
place.
please,
So
I love it. I love it.
redirect me if you need to.
No, I love it.
But so self-love, self-care is really doing self-love. It's taking care of yourself. I've been saying this a lot lately, and I've been hearing a lot of people say it's like putting your mask on first in the airplane, because if you're running on zero, then there's really nothing left for you to give.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as selfish as it may sound, people need to understand that you need to take care of yourself, and then it ripples out. Then you're able to take care of other people a lot more lovingly, a lot more efficiently. So it's really, we're coming from a world where we're told don't be selfish, but you have to be selfish, because that's the way to thrive. And um, we're all just on survival mode, and I think life is too short to just be on survival mode. We need to truly enjoy the life that we have.
Yeah, and I think it's so important what you just said, because basically you described this idea of you almost have to remove yourself from your everyday environment, because that everyday environment is really what has fed this idea that you take care of others first before taking care of yourself. You're here to be of service to other people, and like, yeah, that can be our second sort of priority in life, but the first one needs to be us, so that we can really show up for people in the ways that they need us to. And you did say, also being part of the Latinx community, it just sort of like todo es en familia. You're like, oh, I do this for my mom. Like, I remember one time actually my mom said something, and I was like, I think we were arguing about something. And I was like, Mom, I'm doing this for you and for us, and so we can be good and whatever. And she's like, no. She's like, well, don't do it for me. She's like, do it for you. She's like, you're primero tú, luego tú, y después tú. My mom has always said that to me. And I didn't really start, I would always, growing up, I was like, well, growing up with my mom specifically, especially seeing other people in my family not be like that. My mom's just always been kind of different in that way. And the rest of my family a little bit more traditional. But my mom was like, no, primero tú. And I'm like, but nobody else does it like that. Nobody else is doing, So I think that now I sort of am understanding that, where it's like, you're right, I should do things for myself first, because then that makes me better equipped to do it for other people,
I
So,
love that.
yeah.
I mean, the other thing that I wanted to share, I mean, like I said, this has been a really long journey for about 12 years, and I've done a lot of reading too. There's two books that I really, really highly recommend. One is called Warrior Goddess Boot Camp, and the other one is The Voice of Knowledge. So those two books, one of them I started reading before I went on my trip, and then the other one I read while I was on my trip. And those were just really eye-opening. It really taught me that healing is non-linear. It's all circular. So like, you might say, okay, today I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna eat healthy and I'm gonna work out and I'm going
Yeah.
to go on a walk and I'm gonna read for 5 minutes and I'm gonna or an hour and I'm gonna meditate for 10 minutes. And you could set up a plan, but then you're gonna fall off of it a week later, and that's okay. And I think something that I've struggled with myself is I set up a plan and it's perfect and it looks great on paper, but something always happens, whether I wake up later than I anticipated, a last minute meeting, someone visits last minute, whatever it is, there's distractions. And then I'm like, well, I already didn't do A, B, and C on my list, so I'm just not gonna do anything on my list. And it's just it's okay. Like, it's okay to fall off the train. It's okay to not follow your plan. It takes a while to develop those habits. And so you have to be patient, and you have to say, okay, I didn't do all this, but what did I do? Even if it's just, you know what, I got out of bed. You know what, I showered. I made, even if it's just one thing, I think we have to be grateful and graceful with ourselves and forgiving and loving. And I think that's just the biggest lesson that I've learned over, that long of like, as long as I'm loving myself and forgiving myself and being graceful with myself, then that's what matters.
Yeah, I love that you say that because I am such a planner. Like, I will write things down and I'll highlight them, and I love seeing them crossed off and all this stuff. And oftentimes am very hard on myself for not completing it. I'm like you said, it looks really good on paper. Like, this is what's going to happen, and then distractions happen, and then you're like, shoot, like, damn, I messed it up, right? And so I think that's something that I'm learning too, which is just let it be. It's cool. It happened. It didn't happen. Like, it's fine. The world isn't going to end because I didn't like go to the grocery store today. I can do it tomorrow or something like that. So I appreciate you saying that. And with that, which is kind of one, being hard on ourselves, but what has been one of the hardest things about engaging in this journey for you, whether it's, relationships with other people, the relationship with yourself, because as you mentioned, it's been a long one, and it's a continuous journey, right? It hasn't ended. You're not at the end of like, yes, I've achieved full self-care wellness mode, right? Because it is a lifelong journey. But what has been one of the hardest things of engaging in that healing? Deep breath.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
because it's really hard. One, it's me becoming very vulnerable, and because people that I'm going to refer to are actually probably going to watch this. But one of the hardest thing was breaking up with people that did not serve my life
Mm-hmm.
in the way that I wanted them to. Friendships that I had been part of my life for a long, 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 long time. And when I went on this trip, it was very transformative. And that happens a lot when you have a transformative experience. You start evaluating the people and the things in your life, and seeing if they are still a good fit for you. And when I came back, I was like, okay, what am I was a part of like unhealthy relationships, both romantic and not romantic. And I had to really say, okay, I had this transformative experience. I learned to love myself. Now I need to make sure that I have people who love me the way that I want to be loved in my life. And that meant having to break up with friendships that had been a part of my life for 10 plus years, that I was like, that's silly. Who breaks up with friends? And people think like there has to be an issue, a big problem to break up with people, and there doesn't need to be. Sometimes you just have, like I said, you evaluate what are the qualities in the people that you want in your life, and you can either be very explicit and say, you know what, I am looking for new things, or you just kind of distance yourselves from that. And that has been one of the hardest things. It took me 2 years after I came back from my trip to finally be like, all right, I'm going to prioritize myself. I'm going to be very, very intentional about who I truly call my friends.
Yeah.
And that was really hard because that also meant letting go of a big support group in the Bay Area. And some of those people are actually back in my life. We're rebuilding friendships. I'm redefining, you know, not to be like childish and be like, there's levels of friendships, but that the reality is that there's the people that you're going to go for some things. There's going to be other people there's the people that you're going to go for a good time. There's going to be people that you go for like deep, meaningful conversations. But it put me out of my comfort zone. And again, it was me being very intentional of what are the qualities and traits that I wanted in a friend. And then I started meeting new people, and it was very rewarding. I actually had a lot of the new friends that I had made happened to be women and women of color. And so I actually put together a ladies' night to just bring everyone, because I had been building one-on-one and I was looking for community.
Yeah.
And I brought all the women together that I had met in that year. And it was such a beautiful experience because everyone vibed with each other. Everyone was talking. There was such good energy. And I just took a seat back and I was like, I created this community for myself, and it was beautiful.
Yeah,
We haven't come together anymore in a long, long time. But just to see that I had created that for myself was just really,
yeah,
really fun.
that's amazing, and it's so cool. I think a revolutionary idea for me to think, like, let me take inventory of who I am, what I do day to day, and who I want to be, who I want, the kind of energy that I want to be surrounded with. Because I think on my end, I'm a little bit more like, if your energy's a little off, let me just stay away for a little bit, but like I'll come back, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But this idea that, as you step back and you're getting to know yourself, you also, while you're evaluating like who you want to be, you're also evaluating the people that are around you. And I like, it's just so cool that you did that, because you're right. Like, it would take me a while to say, okay, I'm doing it, or I'm slowly going to stop this, right? And I think that's incredibly powerful to do, is really taking ownership of the people around you, the energy around you. If it's not contributing, if it's not adding value, then just get rid of it. And it's not it doesn't have to be a negative thing. And the opposite, it's quite positive that you did that, right?
You have to do that if you truly love yourself, because
Yeah.
it's like being in an unhealthy and toxic relationship. And I, like I said, I had been in toxic relationships, and I had been settling, and it was a lot of work. But I think if you are intentional and you are resilient, then it happens. I mean, now I look at my friendships and I could truly say, these are people that I know are empowering me, are uplifting me in the way that I've always wanted to. They're friends who don't tell me you're too much. And that's something that I've been working with within myself, of thinking like, I used to really water myself down, and going back to the conversation from the beginning of like bringing your full self to work, but that's to any space. If you make other people uncomfortable, and you have to water down who you are, then you really need to evaluate, it's at the right place for me, is that the right relationship, is that the right space.
Yeah.
And that's what self-love truly is. I
Yeah.
think is like really being intentional and saying, and it doesn't have to be transactional of like, is this person, what can this person bring to the table? And it's not like, oh, can this person buy me gifts? It's more of like, can it fulfill a need that I need as a human, and feeling loved and cared for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just curious to know, you have sort of touched on what we can do day to day, right? In finding those bits of who we are. But, this idea that I need to literally step out of my environment to kind of find and connect with myself. What little things can people do, and have you maybe implemented in your own day to day, that we can start implementing in our own, even if we can't leave for an extended amount of time?
I consider my dad to be a very wise man, and he said, you could go to the end of the world and you may still not be able to connect with yourself. Like, you're gonna connect with yourself wherever it is that you are. And there is a lot of privilege in that, as that I was able to travel and do this. And there's actually a business idea that I have that was freaking had to put on hold because of COVID. And it's not really a business, more of like a nonprofit type of program. But anyways, I'll talk to you about that later.
Yeah, I would love to hear about it.
I think the day-to-day that I've done here in connecting with myself, especially, there was a time this summer where I felt very disconnected from myself, even here, just being, even as much as I, try to practice self-care. During this pandemic, it was really, really hard. And I was starting to feel very disconnected from myself. And so what I did is that I actually went on a social media detox, because it's so easy for us to compare ourselves to other people's lives. And we tend to post just the pretty sides of what's going on in our life.
Yeah.
I try to post it all. Again, people say like, you're oversharing, you're too much. I'm like, no, it's just that we're taught not to be vulnerable in front of other people. We're taught not to show our problems. And that's why people think that they're the only ones going through something, when in reality, so many people are going through the same thing. And so I actually don't mind sharing very vulnerable things and like the ugly side of mental health, or to show just like when I'm not having a good day, because social media is all a lie. We're not always all happy.
Yeah.
So I did a social media detox because I really needed to get rid of the distraction. So for me, I really need to have a really clean apartment for me to feel at peace. Journaling, just talking to yourself, that really helps with just putting your thoughts in writing. I'm not really good at it. Again, it's a habit that I've developed, falling off the train, go back on it. There's a book called The Artist's Way, and it promotes morning pages. And what that does is that every morning, as soon as you wake up, you're supposed to write 3 pages longhand, just everything. It's supposed to be like a brain dump of like all the things, just like, oh, I need to do this, this, and this, or whatever it is. But it's supposed to, and it does bring a lot more clarity into what your priorities for the day or for the week are. So I really encourage writing. Or if you don't like writing, you could just talk to yourself. I talk to myself all the time. You could record yourself, just do anything, even just a list of like, what makes me smile? What brings joy to me? Like, just make that list.
Yeah.
And then do something about it. And you don't have to do all the things every day, but if you do at least one little thing, if it's just, I'm gonna enjoy and do nothing while I drink my coffee, I'm going to go on a walk, like whatever it is, it's time with yourself. That's what connecting to yourself means. You don't have to travel, you don't need to go on a hike. I mean, if you want to be, it is like the indigenous way to go and like connect with Mother Earth, to connect with yourself. But if you're not able to do that, then just make a list. Be intentional of like, what makes me happy, what makes me feel happy. Because I was having this conversation with a friend yesterday or 2 days ago about, we feel happy, we cannot be happy. It's not a mindset, it's an outcome out of something. And I think that's also something that people don't realize, that they, especially when they're comparing themselves to things that they see on social media, we ask, well, how come I'm not happy? And it's like, no, we feel happy, we're not happy. So you have to do something in order for you to feel happy. And so making that list of what's gonna bring joy.
Yeah, I love that. And so it's good to we're taught, don't talk to yourself, you sound crazy, right? But actually it's them who's, if you don't talk to yourself and you're not constantly kind of doing that, then that makes you crazy. So I love that idea of, let me talk to myself, whether it's I record myself, the thought of writing 3 pages, right? Because I journal too. And I go on and off. So some weeks and for months, I'm really good at it. And it's always nice to go back and read through it. And I'm like, oh gosh, I was going through it, or, whatever it is. But when you said, 3 pages, in my mind, I was like, wow, that's a lot to handwrite, because now we just type everything out, or, and I'm like, I have 3 pages worth of stuff in my mind that I can write. But you're right. It's finding what works for you, even in that sense, is like, do I want to write? Do I want to record it? Do I just want to talk to myself and, maybe not listen to this conversation ever again, kind of thing, or revisit it. So I appreciate that perspective there. And I think the last,
one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Was allowing yourself to sit down with your thoughts, because we tend to, again, go to social media, movies, whatever it is, to distract ourselves from what we really are thinking or feeling. So I would say, if writing is not your thing, if recording yourself is not your thing, then just sit down with yourself and meditate and have that conversation and be aware of, how am I feeling? And you don't have to have answers. I think just acknowledging your thoughts and your feelings is good for you to connect with yourself. So I wanted to make sure that that's simple.
Yeah, and really engaging, right? Because sometimes I just had this conversation with my little sister the other day, and she said something like, she's been doing school via Zoom and homework and always on her laptop, always on her phone. So she said something along the lines of, I need a break right now. Okay, Yvonne? And I was like, okay, cool. And I saw her go and start scrolling on her phone. And I was like, Gutty, I hope you know that that's not really a break. Like, you think it's a break, but you're not really engaging truly with yourself to actually give you that mental break that you think you're giving yourself. And so she
Yeah.
was like, no, this is a break because I'm not doing other things. And for me, I find that even when I say, because engaging in self-care could also be, hey, let me Netflix and chill because I don't get to do that often. But for me lately, it's just been such an overwhelming feeling to be on the screen and like on our phones, literally when you wake up. And then I think that my chill time is, oh, let me go and scroll through social media or whatever it is, right? And so
Mhm.
it's important to acknowledge that like that's actually not quite a break. Like it's kind of a little bit more dumping more stuff onto your mind and your brain for you to think about. So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. And so the last question, and I've asked this to all the people that I've talked to, is what's your personal definition of wellness?
Um, when I think of wellness, I think of health, and that doesn't just mean physical, but it means mental, spiritual, emotional. So wellness is taking care of yourself mentally, being intentional of what it is that you're consuming. I've been reading a lot about it. What you're consuming in terms of food, what you're consuming in terms of content, what you're consuming in terms of emotions, allowing people around you. And so wellness um, means being at peace with yourself and knowing that you're taking care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally, and spiritually too, if that's
Yeah.
the
Awesome.
thing.
Thank you. And is there anything else that you would like to say about this conversation before we head out?
I really appreciate you reaching out and creating a space for these type of conversations. Like I mentioned, people don't tend to talk about how hard it is to find wellness, to be able to connect with ourselves and have self-care. And I think these type of conversations need to become a lot more normalized and more common. So
Yeah, and
thank
I
you.
thank you because, for opening up and talking to us about your experience because you certainly didn't have to and you chose to. And I am grateful for it because it truly does help me in my own journey. I think that one of the things that really helped me is finding support in my community, whether they know that they're giving me the support or not, whether you know that you're giving me the support or not. I think your experiences and kind of your journey through this lifelong journey really is helpful in trying to understand and make sense of the things that I'm going through too. So thank you for coming on, and I really truly appreciate it.
Thank you.